everybody. This is Maggie from the Positude shows. Tonight's show will be a Positude PowWow. And I have tonight as my guest Jennifer, who works with a nonprofit organization called Soldier's Heart. And they help specifically deal with the needs of soldiers who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And as we know, more and more the numbers are growing just drastically insofar as the incidences of suicide by our American soldiers. And a lot of the reason for this is because the government just doesn't deal with the PTSD side of a soldier's psyche. What they'll do is they'll bring them home, they'll release them right out into the public, and these guys are meant and left to deal with the trauma that they had to endure and the things, the atrocities that they've had to face on their own. This organization, when I found out about it and started talking to Jennifer, really touched me because it's doing very positive things to help our veterans deal with their post-traumatic stress disorder in a way that's holistic in nature, it's spiritual in nature, and they're not being given pills or, as the government's experimenting with now, possibility of inserting a chip into the soldiers' brains to nullify their emotions, to devoid them of their emotions rather than to talk about their trauma, deal with their trauma, get it out and heal it in a holistic manner. That's why I feel this organization is doing wonderful things to help our veterans. And in the course of this interview, Jennifer will share with you some of the stories that will relate to her by some of these soldiers. And you'll get a little bit of an insight of what these guys have to deal with on a daily basis, the horrible situations that they've been placed in, and hopefully develop a better understanding and more compassion. And so here we go. I'd like to bring in Jennifer. Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm really, really excited to talk to you. Thank you. First, to get started, how did you get involved in this organization?
I had a good friend about 6 years ago. I've known for quite a while, at least 20 years. Kind of cycled back into my life. Called about another quick question. Wasn't really about anything that had to do with his service. And as one veteran has said, it's like opening a closet door to get one thing out and everything falls out. And I kind of feel like that's what this chance encounter, again was about. It was a question about something else, and it led into his depression. He had tried to complete suicide at least twice with a Colt 1911 handgun before I spoke to him on the phone. The gun jammed. I think that sent him a sign that obviously, there's a reason you need to be here. But what it did was it opened my eyes to suicide. I had never known anyone close to me that tried to complete suicide. My grandpa and great uncle were military, but they didn't talk about it. So this was my first experience with someone in the military. I couldn't understand why such a beautiful man with so much going for him. I mean, an MIT graduate, an engineer, very successful business, gorgeous daughter. I believe she was, not even a teenager yet. Marriage was in shambles. That was gone. And I couldn't figure out why. There were no physical, he had symptoms. He would go to the doctor constantly, but there was no diagnosis. There was nothing wrong with him. Something was wrong, but the doctors were, there's nothing wrong. We've done millions of EKGs. We've done hundreds of tests on your blood work. There's nothing wrong, but he was exhibiting physical symptoms that there was something wrong. So there was an invisible wound for sure. Both of us had been raised a very conservative religion. So we knew the scriptures, raised around a type of spirituality. So we were open to finding out possibly what this wound was. I had friends of mine hand me the book Soul Retrieval, Shamanism, Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. All of these, we read through and grabbed stuff out of it that would somehow help him with whatever this was. We just couldn't put our finger on it. and it worked. And he started getting better. Mostly now, hindsight, it's funny because he said, I just needed someone, Jen, to give a shit. And I think that's true with all of us, but especially our veterans. A lot of times we don't know what to say to them. Do we say thank you for your service? Do we say welcome home? Like, what do we say? I have never experienced what they had, so have what the military have. So I had to research and kind of learn their language. I kind of had to learn and research what they've been through to understand what a small fraction of what they had experienced. It was at this time, a few years later, he's starting to actually get emotionally combat effective. We talk about physically combat effective. Let's get you combat effective. He was not emotionally combat effective, but I saw him start to become that. A friend of mine handed me the book. A lot of my friends, I talk about everything I was researching. And she said, I have this book, War in the Soul. She worked with the National Guard here in Albany. And she said, I think you're going to like it. It sounds like something you would enjoy. Well, when I read it, it was everything we had just been through for the last 2 years, and it worked. So I remember telling my friend, I've got to meet this Dr. Tick. I have to meet him. If he's in California. I remember my friend said, Jen, if he's in California, I'll send you. Because I read the book to him. He was in love with Dr. Tick. And when I found out he was only an exit from my house, I realized this was more than just chance. There's no chance. And I called them up and I said, listen, I volunteer with the VA. I have an extra day during my week. I would love to volunteer with your organization. Do you take volunteers? And they were a little taken back. And I remember Jenny was on the phone and she goes, well, I guess, why don't you just come and let's talk? So I showed up. And Ed's usually so busy traveling of all days. He's there with this beautiful Vietnam vet. They're talking. And I remember walking in and Ed's like, wow, so you want to work with us, huh? And I said, oh, I'd love to. And I remember the Vietnam vet put his hand out. He didn't know me. I just was introduced to him. And he said, thank you for wanting to work with a group like us. And I just remembered being humbled by that because I thought, are you kidding? The honor's mine. I was just so taken aback by that. And I've been with them for almost 3 years now. And I've really seen how deficient we are in taking care of our veterans when they come home. It's very easy to medicate them. Many times they talk to a therapist, whether it's a VA or a vet center. And then sometimes the therapist doesn't want to hear anymore because it's too painful. It's too intense. And I don't understand that because our tax dollars paid for the bullet that they use to do things no one should be asked to do, but they signed up for that. So I think in working with Soldier's Heart, it taught me that we really need to have, is it PTSD? Is it post-traumatic? I don't like the disorder part because it's post-traumatic stress. It's a natural reaction to an abnormal situation. I mean, I can't imagine how else to react to something like that. Is it post-traumatic spiritual development? Is it post-traumatic spiritual disorder? Is it post-traumatic social disorder? We have physical evaluations, social, what's your fitness for military, socially, psychologically, physically. But perhaps we need a spiritual evaluation that tends to the broken trust, the broken faith, the fall from grace, the loss of innocence, the denied honor, the lost hope that our veterans come home to. And Soldier's Heart teaches civilians and family members about that. I don't think we know that. I know with World War I and II, everything was rationed. This country knew what it was like to be at war, all of us together. You scrap metal. There was only so much you could buy because the rest went to the war effort. Everyone knew about that. Today, the military is less than 1% of our population. And when they come home, there's such a disconnect. While they've been gone to a war we don't see, we read about it, we watch it on the news, but we don't see it. We did on 9/11, it came here, but we don't see it. We're busy at Starbucks or getting our hair done or having dinner. So when they come home, talk about culture shock. That's culture shock for them. I can't imagine standing in line at a coffee shop, hearing the normal conversation you and I have, knowing you just came a few days or weeks ago from a land where children were set on fire and you had to make a decision what to do. You know, maybe it's a hut and the women were put in one and the children were put in another, and they're running for their lives, and you're tracking the bad guy. Your job's to get the bad guy. You're doing the right thing. And you come across that. No one's coming for them. What do you do? I think that's more of the moral injury, is what do? You didn't sign up for that. That little girl running out on fire is your daughter's age. That little boy's your son's age. No one's coming for them. In this country, if a police officer drives by a deer that's struggling and in pain, we know what happens. We know what he has to do. Do we ever think of what our men and women decisions they have to make over there that they did not sign up for? Or maybe going to a European country where there's, a genocide, where there's the cleansing, an ethnic cleansing, and there's a 12-year-old little girl that begs you just to kill her because she's been raped so many times. I can't imagine that. But that's part of some of the trauma that our men and women see, and we need to honor that sacrifice they've made by hearing their stories. It's uncomfortable and it's icky, but I think that's the least, Maggie, we could do for them. And that's what Soldier's Heart does at retreat. So that's why I was so quick to sign up to volunteer with them, because I had just witnessed this man become a person that loved himself, who thought he was a monster, who identified with what he did for a living. And that was not who he was. It's just what he did as a job. That's what he thought he was, though. And just by giving a space of non-judgment and hearing those stories without judgment, this man learned to love himself, and that made it easier for others around him to love him, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. And working with guys like this myself, and my dad's a Vietnam vet, and knowing what he went through, basically the older school guys were taught they shut down emotionally. They didn't talk about it. As you said earlier, they just refused to talk about it, and they kept all of that inside of them. And the way that our soldiers were treated when they returned from Vietnam was just absolutely disgraceful.
Absolutely.
And even today, with the younger guys coming back from Afghanistan, when I work with them and I see how they've been treated and how they are being treated by our government, just being basically let loose into society, as I said earlier, to deal with these things on their own, or being medicated. Or now we're developing this chip that just dumbs them down and makes them emotionally inept and incapable, essentially a robot. What happens to them? Even the incidents of the way that our country, how many homeless vets? I just worked with a guy last week that has absolutely nothing. He's a helicopter pilot, right? And he's not given a place to live or a roof over his head after he's served our country faithfully. And instances like this are what absolutely kills me. It breaks my heart. And to see these men and women returning and being put in situations like this where they have no avenue for support. I know that the two that you spoke about earlier are actual cases that you had encountered in soldiers that you worked with. They're not allowed to talk about it. They're not allowed to tell people what they saw or what they went through. And so how do you heal that?
Well, it's not so much what they're not allowed. Our veterans still protect us when they come home. They remember, there was a therapist at a particular VA. I love my VA. I do see the wonderfully good. They do help the homeless in Albany. I'm not dogging the VA. I do know there are therapists, however, that do not want to hear these stories. It's too much for them. So what do we expect? I'm in school full time right now. at UAlbany to get a degree as a psychotherapist to work with our veterans the way Soldier's Heart does. I can't imagine coming home and not being able to talk about what I learned. This is so much a part of the fiber of who I am. I can't imagine someone telling me, you know what, Jen, enough's enough. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I can't. That would shut me down. So as a society, we have to be educated to listen to their stories. It is not enough to put a bumper sticker on the car. It is not enough to hold a parade twice a year. We need to do our job as citizens and say, I do want to hear your stories, because you know what? There's a lot they can't talk about. There is a lot they can talk about. But if they have people going, whoa, 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 is it sad? I remember having an article I wanted to share with someone, and she's like, I said, oh, your dad was a vet. Look at this article. Is it sad? Yeah, it's sad, actually. It's actually sad, but that's the least you can do. So I would like to see us as a nation on Veterans Day, and I know Dr. Tick talks about this, having 2 minutes of silence for our veterans. That's what I'd like to see. I would like to see us take responsibility as citizens, whether you are for the war or you are against the war. That money that comes out of your check every week is being used to put bullets in guns of loved ones that we've sent over there. We have to take responsibility for that and say, you know what? I share that guilt with you. We need our government to take responsibility and say, you know what? I share the guilt in what you have to do, or I share and honor what you have to do so I don't have to do it. At least take some responsibility off the shoulders of these men and women that come home and they suffer in silence because they don't want to burden us with the stuff they had to see. Well, what did my guy say? To give a shit. I would like to see our older veterans. I would like to see, let's see, what would we call it? We would call it a veteran service corps. You know, you take care of your buddies. That's what's so sad for them when they come home, is you're in a foxhole with someone who would give their life for you. They would willingly give their life for you. And when they come home, to find that type of loyalty, it's very difficult for someone to say, I would give my life for you. So I would like to see a veteran service corps where our veterans mentor younger veterans. My life goal, hopefully before I die, would be awesome, is to have, I think of a diver. You know, when a diver dives deep, before they come up, they can only come up a little at a time because they'll get the bends, right? I would like to see, we'll start out with one, but I'd like to see 2 or 3 campuses across the country where our veterans come home. We pump millions of dollars into them to be amazing soldiers. And then we kind of drop the ball when they come home. So I'd love to see campuses where they come home and they go there. They don't get on a plane 3 hours from, 13 hours from the time they were in their last battle and now they're home. I'd like to see acclimation centers where they don't get the civilian bends, so to speak. They can come there and they can kind of acclimate. It's interesting because I know the Celts and the samurais used to require you to have some form of creativity and emotional expression. There was a World War II vet who lost an arm in combat, and he became a master one-handed pianist. So in these little acclimation campuses, I'd love there to be ironwork, welding, hiking, working, farming, something artistic, music, writing, whatever, for them to sweat the poisons of war out before they go home. I'd love to see that. And have older retired veterans come back to mentor those who just came home from the field. Our Vietnam vets want a job to do. I mean, they're so used to taking care, and they come home and not only are they shunned because we didn't like the war, but they don't have a mission. They need a mission. They're so used to having a mission. And I'd love to have a campus where they come home, they can come back and donate so many hours of working with our vets that come home. And then how about having the families come and we teach them that soldier, that husband that left you, he's not the same guy that comes home, but we're going to teach you what to expect. We'll teach you what some of the triggers might be and educate the family and community members. That's what I'd love to see for this country. Pour millions into these campuses to integrate, to have them come home, welcome home properly. That's the welcome home. That's the thank you for your service that we can offer them. That I would love to see. Would love to see that. I work hard to make sure I can at least attempt one of those.
That's an amazing, beautiful concept, and I wish you all the luck in the world with that, and I'll pray for you every single day.
Thank you.
That comes to fruition, honestly, because societally as a whole, we need to, we're being dumbed down. We're being taught not to deal with our emotions, and when there's an instance of a problem with an emotional situation, as we discussed before, families aren't being taught to get involved with your children, know what they're doing in their lifestyles, help them. And instead, it's, well, your child acted out today, here's a prescription.
Here's a prescription,
and
right.
So societally as a whole, we need to change that from the bottom up. What we're speaking of specifically here and what you're trying to do, I think is just, again, a truly amazing concept. And we do need to know and understand more of what these guys have gone through so that we can help them to emotionally deal with their problems. And this is why we have the breakdowns of marriages when these guys come back,
yes.
because they have so much guilt over what they've seen over there. They don't know how to deal with their emotions. They do want to shelter their families. And so they don't want to talk to their wife
right.
about how they saw an 8-year-old child blown away because they don't think their wife can handle it. Well, why can't their wife handle it? Because societally, she's being taught that, emotionally, if you have a problem, let's just pop a pill.
Absolutely.
And so this is a wonderful concept. Tell me a little bit more about how Dr. Tick came up with this concept. You said that and I had read the article and I also posted it on my Facebook, about how he has studied different philosophies and different war societies, particularly you had mentioned the Native American and I think the Greek cultures, and how they dealt with their soldiers and how they helped to emotionally heal and integrate them back into society as opposed to what we're dealing with today.
Now, don't forget, this wounding of PTS, which I'll call post-traumatic stress, I learned from working with Soldier's Heart, this goes back, Saint Francis of Assisi, if you research him, he was a wounded warrior. He went into war at age 20, I think it was around the year 1200. He was a POW in the 13th century. He came home, he didn't fit in. And being angry, alienated, he only fit in with the warriors. Does that sound familiar? So he devoted himself to the life of service to other traumatized vets. So what Ed and Kate, who were both ordained ministers as well, what they did was they researched Native American culture and Greek culture, two warrior cultures, and how they cared for their warriors when they came home. As far as the Native Americans, they modeled their caretaking of warriors after the buffalo. When the buffalo were attacked, the older, stronger, bigger buffalo were the perimeter on the outside of the circle, and they kind of had behind them the younger buffalo that were aggressive and ready to take a fight. And then in the middle were the vulnerable, the older, the children. And then when the threat was gone, the older buffalo on the outside, who kind of held back the younger aggressive buffalo on that right inside inner circle, well, whoever was wounded, they reversed. So those on the outside were taken to the center, and they were tended to, and they were cared for when danger was gone. So the Native Americans said, okay, this is how we're going to handle our warriors. So when a warrior would go to fight in battle, the whole camp was at war. They weren't literally out there fighting, but the things they wore changed. their tents, things they used. It reminded me of the war effort in the during the first, World War, where everyone here back home knew there was a war going on. There wasn't a disconnect, and everyone kind of pitched in and did what they could back home for those who were over there fighting. Now, when the Native American warrior would come home, one of the first people he would see would be the medicine, the healer, the shaman, and he would tend to the warrior. Sometimes they would bury them in dirt and let the war toxins just leach out into the earth. There were prayers made for those that the warrior's life took and those who he took their life. And those prayers it brought closure to what had happened, that warrior was spiritually tended to. Then, and only after that, whether that took a week or months, would the warrior be allowed back into the community. And once he was allowed into the community, everyone sat around and listened to the stories. The children weren't put in a safe space. Everyone listened. Everyone listened to what this warrior did. And the honor and respect showed to his stories. I can't imagine how that would have made him feel. I think about how our Vietnam vets came home, if they had only come home to something like that. I can't imagine. And then that was it. Then the children knew what it was like to be a warrior. You only fought when someone came to hurt you or your community. You didn't just go out and fight people. You did it to protect your community. So that's what these young ones knew. And they knew one day they might have to be that, but that there was a community participation in welcoming this warrior back. Same for the Greek culture. You had Ares. Ares loved battle, delighted in the slaughter. You had Athena. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, the arts, civilization. She only used war to protect civilization. So that's pretty much the basis of the retreats that Soldier's Heart has. 4 or 5 times a year, we have a retreat coming up at St. Thomas Seminary in April. We have another retreat in Massachusetts the end of May, and we have a moral injury one in October. That's what happens at these retreats. There's community members. There's someone who said, I used to love this guy back in the 60s and he fought and I'm not with him anymore. What I want to understand what happened to him. There's a girl who says, my grandfather fought. I want to understand. We have military. We have people who dealt with sexual trauma in the military. Our female veterans. Military service members who just can't move on, like my friend. There's something there. They look together, they look fine, but there is an invisible wound there that medication and, our normal prescriptions for dealing with PTSD is not addressing. And that's what we do at our retreats. And I have to say, if you ever go to one of these retreats, you'll never be the same. I've never been the same. I'll never forget on one day, the civilians, we leave the room, the veterans are there. We come back in 15 minutes later and Dr. Tick has asked the veterans to put red tape on a wound that hurts them. So some put the red tape on their heart, some put the red tape on their head. Some actually are amputees and have missing limbs, and they put the red tape there. As a civilian, you walk back in and you're asked to look at that veteran and just stand there and pause at the sacrifice that veteran, male or female, took, the hit they took for you. And that is the most sobering, uncomfortable, life-changing event I've ever been to, ever. I mean, there's no parade that will do what I witnessed on that retreat. And then we're asked to go around the circle again and take a piece of the tape off of them and put it on ourselves. And that is us as civilians taking responsibility for that injury that vet or active member military service member took for us. And then we're asked to take the tape off of us and put it on the wall where there's the map of the United States, and that's representing the country taking responsibility for that wound you carry. If I could just tell you how amazing those veterans and vilified they feel, the honor that's given to them, it's like someone gives a shit and is willing to go there with you. And that's why I'm in love with the work. That's why I volunteer and will do as much as I can with this small organization to get the word out to lower the 22 suicides a day within our military community. It's interesting. Dr. Tick has made 18 trips to Vietnam annually, and he takes back veterans who want to go. The Vietnamese people have very little PTSD. Their whole nation was at war. They had to heal together. They let go. So they find it odd when we go back because they don't understand why we keep holding on to the guilt. It doesn't make sense to them. And so many of our veterans, they want to go back. I know one veteran this last year donated $500. Would you just please buy a water buffalo? I shot so many of them, and I realize now that was their livelihood. Could you please buy a family a water buffalo? And that act in itself is enough to heal, is enough to make restitution for what happened. I hope that explains enough of why I'm very passionate about this work.
Absolutely, and very eloquently as well, I might add.
Thank you.
You're welcome, more than welcome. Again, I appreciate you and your work and the work of Dr. Tick. Would you mind sharing with the public? So many of us don't really understand specific incidents of what these men and women have to experience over there and why their trauma runs so deep. Would you mind sharing some stories that were shared with you as to what some of these soldiers had to go through?
Yes, I mean, as I had mentioned earlier about, coming across atrocities that you're there for a reason. You're there to, because someone else, whether it's ethnic cleansing or, for whatever reason, it's already been happening there, but you don't anticipate having to come across it. And I know the children is sometimes the hardest. You go into a room or there's been and you enter a building, and let's say you had to get into the building. And a lot of times in those other countries, they'll put the women and children, where the blast is going to be. And then when you go in, when you have to see that wasn't your intent. Your intent was to, get the people causing the problem. And when you walk in and see because of what you did, a child, possibly your child's age, or a woman, who was raped and killed. It wasn't due to anything you did, but to see them have to kind of take the dead and bury them right away, because I know in other cultures, when someone passes on, the family has to bury them right away. And just to know that you were responsible, but that wasn't your intent. I mean, you weren't the one who put the vulnerable, in a place of danger, but it still doesn't change the fact that a life was taken. And it was, I'm sure I can't imagine having to live with that. I can't. But being able to come home and express that to a family member, possibly build an altar, possibly say prayers at night. If we can be strong enough as a community to have that conversation, then possibly say a prayer at night for that lost little boy or little girl that you just came upon. You didn't do it. Someone else did it, but you can't get them out of your head. And I do think of the one with the women and children being put on fire. What do? I can't imagine what that service member did, but I can't imagine living with what he or she had to do.
Right. We had spoken earlier, too.
Yeah.
The one that really touched me was the instance in which, as a sniper, this gentleman had to watch and had to survey his prey. He watched his wife. He saw the children. He got an insight into their family life and their personal life.
He said, I saw it. I think the worst is when you have a little girl during ethnic cleansing beg you to kill her because she's been raped so many times, and that little girl is your daughter's age. We're talking 8 to 12. I can't imagine. And that's what keeps a lot of our service members up. So if we could be strong enough, as they are warriors, I know they come home and they want to protect us, but we can, there's so many fun stories. Let's start with the fun stories. How about that? So many people walk up and go, how many people did you kill? Don't ask them that. Don't do that. But there's so many fun stories. Tell me about something, the charms, the MREs. The MREs are the meals they eat. And back in the 80s, no one wanted the Lucky Charms because it was bad mojo. It was, it's funny. Like, let's talk about some of the funny stories. And then if you can research what it's like to be at war, if you could watch a movie or if you could read a book and say, what does this mean? What's it mean to blouse your trousers? Oh, I'll show you what that means. To give a shit. I'll go back to that one sentence, to give a shit. And then what that might do is it might open up a door where if they do have that heavy moral injury that's weighing down on them, if they know it's safe and you're okay with them telling you, they'll tell you. And hold that space. Hold that sacred space as a spiritual person that possibly you can do. Maybe even going to a confess wouldn't have the power as much as a human, another human being in a spiritual way, holding that space and hearing a story like that. And possibly in prayer, pray for that person. That would do more than 20 bottles of Xanax. That would do more than chewing Klonopin and downing it with alcohol by just doing that. I know my friend, when he comes home, the first thing he does is go to the ocean and he washes his hands in the ocean. Wouldn't that be nice if, as a caregiver, a loved one, a spouse, a father, a mother, go to the ocean and do that? You don't even have to talk. You don't even have to hear what happened, but do that ritual, washing your hands and putting that like somber, sacred, just something as simple as that. But they're coming home a different person. They're still that loved one, but don't forget, they've been reassembled because they have to reassemble them. They learn a new language in boot camp. They learn they have to, or they wouldn't survive. So can we educate ourselves about this new person coming home? That's all. And learn to navigate their world. I think that's what my mission in life is to help educate the rest of us. Open up that conversation. It's icky. It's like being a parent. No one could ever tell you what it's going to be like to be a parent. The diapers, the hurt, the pain, but you do it because you love those children. I'm asking all of us to do the same thing for our veterans. It's not pretty sometimes. It's icky. We would never do that, but guess what? We weren't asked to do that. They did that so we wouldn't have to. But be a witness to those stories. Yeah, that's
Symbolically, when you spoke about that, the first thing that popped into my mind was Jesus washing the feet of his disciples.
Absolutely.
And showing, that's what I've got chills because that's what jumped out to me.
Yep.
Showing the compassion, the caring, loving that person like you love yourself, right?
So can we spiritually wash the feet of our men and women when they come home?
Absolutely.
And that's not a pretty job. I've seen some funky toes, and that ain't a pretty job. But could we do that for them? Absolutely.
And also, too, what a lot of people don't realize, and what I've learned working with veterans and soldiers, and I know that you have as well, is the personal traumas that they face inside the armed forces themselves.
Yes.
The soldiers among soldiers, the instances of women who are being harassed and raped, and men that are being harassed and raped. I know that Ed addressed that in that one article. It's all encompassing. It's not just a matter of what they have to deal with fighting the enemy, but fighting inside the service that they enlisted, in the country that promise to protect, they're being violated inside those organizations as well. Can you speak a little bit about that?
And they're not being, it's so interesting you said that. I remember meeting a nurse. Now imagine this. Beautiful woman, mother, 20 plus years military service as a nurse in Germany. So the men that landed on the table in front of her still had dust from Iraq and Afghanistan on them. Imagine that. Legs coming off, arms coming off, blood everywhere, screaming, asking for their parents, their spouse, their loved ones, please don't let me die. And when she came home, she had to fight for her PTSD. What's the word I'm looking for?
Her disability pension.
Her disability, yes, all of that. She had to fight that. She was suffering from, they said it's not PTSD because you didn't see combat. Now, at a retreat, this woman was surrounded by Vietnam vets at the last day of the retreat that circled her. And in addition, did I mention possibly, probably, most likely also suffered sexual trauma? These vets, she finally got her PTSD rating, so she got benefits, thank goodness, that she even had to prove to them she had PTSD. But these veterans surrounded her, and one of the Vietnam vets gave her a flag that he had woven of the Vietnam colors. And he said, you saw more combat than we did. And they said, you're one of us. And we all lost it. And it was the healing, it was the confirmation she needed to hear from these hardened vets who did see combat to tell her, you're one of us. It's okay, you're one of us. You know what? You probably saw worse than we did. So absolutely, you have, think about it. It's interesting when, I believe it's, especially with our female vets, our male vets, and I didn't know this, I had to learn this, but our female vets, when, let's see if I can find it. I had so much written down to say. When men become warriors early on in life, it's easy for them. It's easy for them. Women have a loving archetype. Their warrior archetype kicks in later in life. They become okay with taking life midlife, but early on,
we weren't made to be warriors. I mean, you know what I mean? So
yeah. So think about early on, females have more of a loving archetype, and that warrior archetype kicks in as they get older. Think about our 17, 18, 19-year-old female combat soldiers. And then hopefully, I know as of a year or two ago, they didn't get combat pay. They saw combat, but because they were women, they didn't get the combat pay. And yes, then let's talk about the sexual trauma that happens to our men and our women. Let's talk about, maybe being ordered to do something is not right. And if you disobey, you might not come home. You might be fragged. So you're absolutely right. There's more to these, and these might be stories our veterans cannot talk about. So you're absolutely right. The more we can, research and read and movies and whatever that we can do, it kind of opens our mind to their world, to what will be coming home to us. Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. I know that the articles that I've read that you provided to me, and from speaking to you from personal experience, so many of these, all of these guys are helped and at least somewhat healed. And that to me is it's just wonderful to see. Can you give me a specific example of a case that you had? What is the case that you're most proud of?
I'd have to say my best friend. I have to say having a picture of him riding a bike As simple as that is, finding delight in something like that. I mean, we take that for granted, but I guess you get so consumed with taking care and taking the bullet for someone else that when you come home, you don't know how to take care of yourself. So to see him take a picture of a butterfly, to see him decide I'm going to go gluten-free, I'm going to take a yoga class. I laugh because he burns incense with a blowtorch. I'm like, I think we're defeating the purpose here, but it's okay if that's what you want to do. And it's funny because he would go, this is great because I know my gas mask is on tight if I burn incense and I can't smell it. And I just laugh going, wow, I really don't think your ancestors are completely happy with how you're choosing to use incense, and that's completely okay. But to see him just learn to love himself. I mean, 6 years ago, when I asked him, what do you like about yourself? I think I squeezed one thing out of him. One. He says, okay, now you're ready to hear what I don't like. And I'm like, no, it's okay. And then 2 or 3 years later, having to fill up 2 pages. I remember one day I was like, hey, just tell me, what do you like? I filled up 2 pages of him just rambling. I like my sense of humor. I do like the color of my eyes. I like how I know a lot of stuff. That he doesn't know, I'm crying. I'm on the other side of the phone crying. I couldn't believe it. That is the most successful story. And I knew if this helps him, there are men and women out there that this will work for. This will absolutely work for, just to get on a bike and ride it. Just to think enough of yourself that you would get a bike and take a bike ride on a bike trail. As simple as that is. That is the most successful story I've ever seen. And this is someone with 30 plus years of military service.
That's just awesome. And, not to trivialize, because as I said before, every life that you touch, every person that you're able to give a kind word for, you have done so much for the hearts of so many that have been neglected and abused and just pushed to the side. And I know in doing this work, you mentioned before the importance of integrating the families and allowing the families to understand. With me, and I know that you can relate to this, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. You have to regain that person's trust. You have to show them that you care. You have to allow them, as you said earlier, maybe telling a funny story, to be able to get them to open up, to feel, to be able to trust you enough to share that. And then go deeper, and layer by layer, you just peel away that trauma and help them to get it out, help them to vocalize how they feel. And, in watching the pain on their faces and watching the emotional release there and giving them something to look forward to, positive things, is just so important. And if we could all just take 2 seconds out of our day to see that guy with the Vietnam hat at Walmart and say, yeah, I do believe it's important to thank them for their service and thank them for their loyalty for their country. So many of us just take that for granted, and we'll sit here and we'll complain about what we don't have or what we should have or what we think we're entitled to have, but we don't give a second thought to the guys who allowed for us to have those justices and those liberties and those freedoms.
Just say welcome home.
There you go.
That's it. Just go up to them and put your hand on your heart and look in their eyes like you get what they did, and just say welcome home. That's it. It's as simple. Because some guys will say, don't thank me for my service. You don't know what I did. I did some terrible things. Well, you know what? Welcome home. I've never had a veteran disagree with saying welcome home, ever.
There you go. So we have about maybe 5-6 minutes left. Is there anything that you'd like to add in closing?
I would just like to say, this is something all of us can do. I'm so grateful you took the time just to hear the other side of what our men and women come home from. Just thank you for taking the time, and do some research. Look online. Definitely look at read Ed's book, War in the Soul. That's the one that did it for me. That was it, hands down. And if you know of any veterans struggling, we get calls every week in the office from mothers crying because something's wrong with their son. And why isn't the military fixing this? Why isn't the military doing anything? We get calls from other people. I've got a buddy. He's in active duty. He's on a base. He's suicidal. What can you do? We're missing something, but we all can be a part of the puzzle that helps them. All of us have the opportunity to do that, you know. And I think of the parable with the lost sheep. These men and women, because they're such a small percentage, they're like the lost sheep, you know. And it's the parable of the son coming home. There's no one that isn't as important as these men and women. So doing what we can, you know, and again,
Bobby,
just
your elected officials,
yes,
send those
absolutely.
letters in. Explain to them that you're not happy about the way our veterans are being treated.
Yeah.
Do things governmentally. And also, do you have contact information, specific contact information? Do you have phone numbers? Do you have websites? Things that we can get out as resources to the people as to how to contact your organization.
Yes, absolutely. It's a soldiersheart.net, www.soldiersheart.net. On there, you'll find our email address, our website. We have foundations. What we have found successful is so many of our vets can't afford to come to the retreats. So we have foundations that just donate. We just had the Greer Foundation said, have a retreat. Here's 10 grand and no one pays. And that's what we did. The response was overwhelming. And we had to unfortunately turn some veterans away, but it's civilians, nurses, veterans, family members. It's a unique blend of all of them. It's not always just the veterans, because that's the problem. We have veterans coming home and we don't know. So we need them to teach us. What do you need from us? That's why these retreats are so important. So possibly thinking about funding a retreat. And no one pays. You just come. And like I said, we have one in April that's fully funded. And I think I can't even remember how many have signed up, but it's overwhelming, but we had to cap it off. So definitely, you know, look up information about that. Yeah, that's www.soldiersheart.net. And I believe on there, you'll see links. If you have any questions, any emails, info@soldiersheart.net. Just email there and any questions, like I said, and be happy to help. But we'll do what we can.
Is Ed's book, is it available through like Amazon or at Barnes
It
and
is.
Noble?
Oh, absolutely.
Or,
Yep,
okay.
it is. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, War and the Soul. You can rent it. You can rent it out from your library. Most libraries have it. He has a book, Warriors Return. So yeah, by all means, I mean, he has many books, but definitely look into those two for sure. I think Warriors Return, and then he has an audio book as well. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, Jennifer, for sharing this with us and taking the time out for the interview today. And again, I really appreciate you. I'll pray for your continued success. Mm-hmm. And if you ever need anything from me, get a hold of me. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And keep in touch with me and let me know how your adventures are going.
Thank you.
And again, God bless you. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. And thanks for being here with us today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
There you go, folks. That's tonight's show. I hope that you enjoyed it. The music, as always, was provided by my buddy Pat Carr. Please check him out on SoundClick or pwcarmusic.com. Thanks so much. God bless everybody, and have a good night. Take care.